Every conversation about AI and existential risk tends to leapfrog past the far more immediate and arguably more terminal crisis, the widespread erosion of our ability to read carefully, think critically, and argue in good faith, with or without AI. If humanity is facing a cliff, it won't be a robot that pushes us over. It'll be our own intellectual atrophy, the slow, complicit decay of the skills that make life, scientific progress, and rational discourse even possible. We like to imagine that intelligence is about knowledge, but knowledge, especially in the digital age, is cheap. Every student has a library in their pocket. Every adult walks around with a magic box that can access thousands of years of human thought. And yet, we are somehow becoming dumber by losing our capacity to use information responsibly and intentionally. The decline in critical reading and thinking is real. SAT reading scores in the US have steadily gone down over the past 2 decades. College students struggle to distinguish arguments from opinions, to identify assumptions, to follow chains of reasoning beyond the first premise. And online, these deficits are amplified. We live in a swamp of misread headlines, bad faith tweets, and memeified pseudo-history. The algorithm does not reward careful reading. It rewards outrage, fluency, and speed. AI improves with scale. More data, more feedback, more compute. Human cognition doesn't. We learn slowly and we forget quickly. We are vulnerable to distraction, bias, social pressure, and fatigue. This used to be balanced by institutions that prioritized depth. Schools, libraries, editorial standards. But those are disappearing, replaced by a fractured information economy optimized for clicks. AI doesn't need to destroy us. We are already eroding from the inside. We are becoming a society where people can no longer tell the difference between a well-supported argument and a seductive hallucination. Civic debate devolves into performance, complexity becomes illegible, and decision-making collapses. If humanity loses our freedom, it won't be because of a robot uprising. It will be because we abandon the skills needed to exercise it. One of the biggest problems, we've stopped reading. Most people, for most of history, have never been deep readers. But the difference now is that our culture no longer even aspires to it. We valorize takes over texts. We reward brevity over precision. People don't want to engage with arguments. They want to know whose side you're on. Platforms like TikTok and Instagram are designed around fragments. What goes viral is what can be consumed instantly and emotionally. Influencer culture monetizes attention and abandons insight, and as a result, many younger users aren't just reading less, they're reading worse. Paragraphs become walls of text. Nuance becomes a liability. The average person today spends more time swiping than reading, more time reacting than reasoning. The speed and emotional texture of viral content trains the brain to expect cognitive ease. Anything that requires real interpretive labor gets dismissed as elitist, boring, or inaccessible. There was a time when being educated meant being able to follow a long argument, challenge its structure, and locate it within a broader tradition of ideas. And today that's treated as arcane. The result is a flattening of discourse. A narrowing of permissible thought, and a creeping infantilization of the public mind. And instead of using AI to sharpen our thinking, we're using it to skip the thinking part altogether. The irony is that we now have access to tools that could help us think better, language models that can analyze text, summarize arguments, and simulate dialectic. But we're not using them that way. Instead, we're asking them to do our thinking for us. We want AI to make decisions, write drafts, argue cases, summarize history. But if we're not careful readers, we won't be careful judges of AI outputs. Already, people are citing AI answers as if they were definitive, not probabilistic. They don't question the model's framing, they don't inspect its assumptions, they don't challenge its omissions. They treat it the way medieval peasants treated oracles, with a mix of awe and resignation. And that's not artificial intelligence so much as artificial authority. In 1946, just after the war, W.H. Auden said, "Thou shalt not sit with statisticians nor commit a social science." He was being ironic, of course, but the deeper fear in his post-war generation was that people might stop thinking for themselves and defer to systems they didn't understand. That fear has come true as the intellectual softening of the public. Debate is not violence, questioning consensus is not disinformation, and the purpose of education is not to protect feelings, it's to build minds capable of navigating conflict without resorting to coercion or collapse. The AI safety community talks a lot about alignment, how to ensure machines act according to human values. But what if the deeper problem is that we can no longer define those values clearly? What if we no longer have the mental habits to detect contradictions, weigh trade-offs, and anticipate unintended consequences? An unthinking population can't align anything, it can only comply. You can't outsource responsibility to a machine. You can't build a wise society on top of a population that doesn't read, doesn't argue, and doesn't reflect. Intelligence, even superintelligence, can't compensate for that. At best, it will mimic our incoherence, and at worst, it will systematize it. So what do we actually need to defend? We need people who can still sit with a hard book, entertain unfamiliar ideas, admit when they're wrong, and argue without treating disagreement as betrayal. If we make it through the next century, it'll be thanks to the people who kept thinking for themselves while everything around them encouraged conformity. It'll be because some of us held on to the disciplines that make a society flexible, creative, and sane. This isn't a technical problem, it's a cultural problem. The future isn't threatened by the speed of our machines, it's threatened by the softness of our minds. The truth is, we don't need AI to become sentient to pose a risk to humanity. All it has to do is distract us while we forget how to think.